This is Giles Martin, and you're listening to the Fab 4 Free For All.
And welcome to another edition of the Fab 4 Free For All. I am your moderator for this show, Mitch Axelrod. And joining me, as they always do, are my good friends, Tony Triguardo.
Hi there, folks.
And lesser of a good friend.
Hey.
Just kidding. Rob Leonard.
Hey, everyone. How you doing?
You all missed the outtake, so.
Just kidding around, folks. Well, it's so nice to be back. And we are doing a show that we wanted to do a while back. As of this taping, the Deluxe Super Edition of Revolver has been out for a little while.
But life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans.
That's
Lord
true.
knows. And but we've been trying to keep you up to date on our Facebook page with content and stuff. So hopefully that's been keeping you busy and entertained. But anyway, the Revolver Super Deluxe Edition. We were so excited about this one when it was announced it was coming out finally. We were, as Rob said off mic, we were at an event in 2015, right, Rob?
Right.
And I think it was the Beatles 1 Plus.
Well, the Beatles won, and we got to see videos from the 1 and the 1
Right.
Plus.
And we were outside talking with certain people, and we heard that Revolver was next. That was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, we also heard that Revolver was a bucket list
Yes.
choice.
And-
So
Right.
kudos
Yeah,
to the person who wanted it on the bucket list. Anyway.
And let me tell you something right now. We finally got it. What's really cool about it is that they did not release it on an anniversary year, which
Right.
is really good because that bodes well for the future. It was just, you know what? We did the later years, and it seems lately like the past 10 years, the Beatles have always focused on the, quote, cool period, later stuff like, Pepper and White Album and Abbey Road and Let It Be. And you know what? That it worked out fine because of the years and the 50 years. But, if we have to wait, for others, like you could do Definitely Please Me in this year because it ends in a 3 and that was released in a 3.
Right.
But I'm very glad that they chose not to wait and to give Revolver its due because it certainly deserves it. It was released in many different variations, or as we know, LPs, CDs. The only thing that we didn't get, and I don't think we need to talk about it really, other than a couple of sentences, is a Blu-ray. Unless you guys really want to bring it up. We talked to Giles about it, and I don't believe anybody at this point. I think it could have been in there, but for whatever reason, it wasn't.
I personally would have liked it only because it's I don't want to say it's the now technology, but there are some things that have Beatles 5.1 and other things that don't. And if you look at what they're doing with John Lennon's catalog, 5.1, if there's a quad mix, they include the quad mix. So to make a 5.1, I think would be fun to hear, be different. I'm not sure why they didn't do it for this album, but
especially given Peter Jackson's new technology.
Right, and that's why. And this is the first time that this technology has been used on a Beatles release, besides obviously Get Back. So to me, I would have liked to have seen a 5.1, only because it's this album especially. But I expect that with every album, even because a lot of other artists have done that also. They include a 5.1 mix, and this is the only time they're going to be doing this.
I think it might have something to do at this point, though. Rob, I could be wrong, but I think it might have to do with the distribution medium because Blu-ray players themselves, like the Blu-ray concept, never really took the route
it didn't.
they
You're right.
expected it to. So I think it's not necessarily. I think that they're going to, in the next couple of years, they're going to try to solve the distribution problem of 5.1 and quad. I think if the mixes are there and they want to try to work with one of the subscription services to get it out there, or an HD tracks type method of doing it, but it may be a matter of figuring out how to handle all of the money aspects.
It could
No.
be.
That's it. Cost is definitely a factor here.
Cost is a factor, and also points. How much are the Beatles getting per song when they do this, when they do that, when it's a new 5.1?
But
It
that.
would be another disc in the canon, but at the same time, I would hope that they did maybe along the way. Maybe they do a 5.1 box down the road or something like they did the mono box.
Yeah, but they won't do. That's why I'm saying we're not going to see physical medium. There's no. It's just not needed, and you do.
I'm not sure of that, because we're the generation that still needs. You don't, because you're good with the equipment.
No, not at all. It's not about that, Rob. It's the idea that most people who've got really major audiophile setups these days, even older people who are just getting the money to start to buy, people our age or a little younger who are buying big audio setups, Blu-ray is one way to go. A lot of them are streaming. A lot of them are using their smart TV and sound bars, and that's not, that's not just people our age, or it's people older than us even are just moving over to that and away from that Blu-ray disc, because the Blu-ray machine, they're not using it.
But the only thing is, Tony, that the Beatles themselves set the precedent by having it in every box except
this one. Yeah.
Right. So again, I think they're concentrating on Atmos, which obviously a lot of people don't have either now.
At most, like 5 people have it. I mean, that's the joke about Atmos.
It's 20 people who have it.
For the 20 people who buy quad. Right?
Well, hey, but quite frankly, we heard, Rob and I had the privilege of hearing a lot of it on Atmos Spatial, and it was amazing. But I don't have it in my house, and neither does Rob. And I know I know that you can get the, if you have an iPhone, you can get the special headphones and experience it. But even that is not like experiencing it in a studio setting. But
think about what you just said.
What?
Think about what you just said. The idea of, it's gotten to the point where that type of file is available for streaming.
Yeah.
And the truth is, anytime you deal with really high-end stuff like that, you're kind of putting the onus on the end user to go out and buy that technology. So I guess what I'm thinking is that if they move over to giving us stuff like 7.1 Revolver in a streaming format or in a downloadable format or something like that, if I can go out and buy a $125 pair of headphones, or $200 pair of headphones to listen to a lot of my favorite music now in an Atmos type environment, or in streaming, or in
whatever they call it,
in spatial format, I might go do that, because I don't have the room in my house.
Correct.
To do, especially because a lot of people now aren't living in as large spaces as they used to. A lot of people are downsizing their, so somebody of our age or older who's now downsizing, they don't have the room to put up 7 speakers or 5, what have you. So maybe they're finding that doing studies of those Blu-ray discs are great. Have you used any of them, the 5.1 Blu-ray discs? Have you, Rob?
I have the White Album, but
okay. I did it once at the library. We did Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah, I would just like the opportunity to have it. I mean, I agree with you with streaming, but at the same time, you don't want what happened with Flowers in the Dirt with Paul, where he put up 1 disc worth of material that you only could download, and people said, "Well, I already paid for the box. Why am I downloading this now?"
I've never had a problem with that. I just don't.
I know you didn't have it, but I know I did, and I know other people did too. I'd just like to have both. If people want to stream it, great. They make more money on the disc, so that could be part of it.
They make more money on the discs.
Well, they sell a box set over streaming,
Yeah, but then you have to add to the cost, and this box was pretty pricey.
It was already pricey. That's probably why.
Yeah, yes, and that's the other thing. And we'll talk about a little bit about the content, only because it had less content and was more money.
I know.
So if they add another disc, then there's still less content, and a lot more money. The only
But,
thing I would say,
well, I was gonna say, but Rob, I think you misunderstood. I'm not talking about streaming, meaning like putting it on Spotify. I'm saying
Uh-huh.
like the type of streaming to carry like 7.1, that's going to end up being exclusive streaming or an exclusive download that you get from the Beatles website.
right?
It's not
Or
like it's going
somewhere.
to end up on, Spotify and they're going to get 0.0001 cent per playing. I'm talking about like there's going to be a way for you to do a massive download and have all that stuff on your hard drive. Just to,
It'd be nice if they can get to that point. I mean,
yeah, I think so.
The only thing I will say, and then we'll move on, is that given the new technology of I'll say the Peter Jackson technology, I think the public will be clamoring for new technology in terms of the listening experience for every future release. And if we
Sure.
don't get it, that either by what you said, Tony, in some sort of download capacity, or Rob in another disc, then I think we're not getting gypped, but we're missing out, because there's going to be probably future releases that the AI technology, or Peter Jackson technology, absolutely enhances. And I, for one, would at least love to hear it, whether it's at your library where you have the capability, Tony, or it's on my hard drive and I have headphones with spatial,
Yeah, see, I like that,
capability.
but like, I guess it's just kind of an odd thought because it's taking that music, and I get it, and I'm not, being a stick in the mud over it, but it's like it's taking them, you take the Hard Day's Night album and you take the stereo mix of the Hard Day's Night album. Yeah, maybe it would be cool to be able to put a pair of headphones and to be, like coming up from the middle of the floor in the sound studio where they're rehearsing to, that's cool, but it seems just sort of like a little over the top for the music that was before Revolver. Like it's just,
because I
know,
think I know where you're going. The less tracks you had to record on, the less the technology will make it seem more spectacular.
yeah,
So-
I'd rather feel like I'm in the room where, the sound is so great that I'm in the room hearing the Beatles hearing their playback for the first time, and that's stereo speakers.
Yeah, there's limitations because of the technology at the time of recording. Not because Peter Jackson.
Sure.
If you have two tracks, Peter Jackson can only do so much to make that sound interesting. But when you go to 4 or 6 or 4 and 8 and however many tracks now, and you start playing with that technology, it makes it that much more exciting. But who knows when they get to Please Please Me, or Beatles for Sale, how it's going to enhance it. It may not enhance, it may make it sound clearer,
Yeah.
but it may not make it be any different, quote, like orgasmic experience, like some of these tracks you hear now. So we'll have to wait and see. But
yeah,
in any
absolutely.
case.
Well, one more thing
sure.
about Blu-ray. It wouldn't have worked on this, but it did work on Plastic Ono Band for John Lennon. Is the Blu-rays also store a lot more sound, and they had songs that were on the Blu-ray that were only available on the Blu-ray if you bought that big box set. So that would be an advantage of the Blu-ray also, because you can fit a lot more on it. But I understand where you're coming from, Tony. And
just think about how limited you are in terms of, I mean, if I have a thumb drive with those 2496 audios on them,
right,
I can play it anywhere.
Right.
That's true. I'm not saying otherwise.
Yeah.
But you know what, guys? I think, Rob, if there's an Easter egg on Plastic Ono Band, where if you find it, you get to hear the outtake of Good Day Sunshine that was not on any place here.
Nice. Very nice.
So let's move on. Real quick about the content. A lot of people are bitching and complaining about not getting enough. And again, we as fans, we know what has been bootlegged. Not a lot of Revolver has been bootlegged. And what we got is great, and we have no clue what they had to work with. So I don't want to get into bitching about it, because I do love what we got, and some of it is revelatory, as we've said. So, yes, could they have lowered the price? probably, but you know what? I go to the supermarket now, and unfortunately, I'm tapped out. Buying 3 bananas. So,
Yeah.
so that means I'm eating them all. You guys can't have one
There
each.
you go.
No, but I
Thank you.
mean, the point is everything's going up, and you pick and choose what you're going to buy and not buy.
And
Well,
it's the Beatles audience. It's the they're is this the last opportunity that we're going to get for expanded editions of this material? Yeah, of course.
Probably.
If not,
But the only thing is, Tony, a lot of people have no issue going into Target and spending $35.99 on an album that they already have, like let's say Creedence Clearwater Greatest Hits, right? You go and buy $35.99, but for $179, you're getting all this content that we haven't had before on a Beatles album. And I think
I agree, but that
I know.
kind of like a price point, like the $35.99. I get that, but you can often find them discounted. With all due respect to the
I
Beatles
know.
organization and to Apple, you could go to websites where they have 40% off sales, but guess what's excluded from those sales
Well,
all the time
I think this one
is the
wasn't.
Beatle product.
Yeah, this one wasn't as discounted as in the past.
Let it be. You're right. Let it be was discounted.
Let It Be was,
You're correct. Let it be was discounted.
and I think the
Yeah.
White Album was too. I think I got you a deal on that, Tony and Rob, on the White Album one.
Such a deal. We did.
Yeah. So this one not yet, and maybe it will be, but
I
well,
should
also
really.
the 2 CD set, that covers a lot if you think about what's on here.
does.
So if you can't afford it but can afford the 2 CD set, which would be the first album, the stereo album remixed, and the second album of 20 outtakes, you know what? I can't complain.
Yeah, you
Plus,
are.
there are so many people who complain about that stuff for every one of these releases, and I keep saying, a lot of people say I don't even care about the outtakes. Well, then you know what? There is a single CD disc of this too.
Right.
Go buy it for $12.99 on Amazon and don't complain. You're going to complain for the guy who is going to buy the CD set, the big 5 LP set, and you're not buying it, but you're complaining for him or her.
Shut up! It's the bloody Beatles, isn't it?
Well,
It is. You're right.
We say that at every box set show, by the way.
They do.
But
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 guess
it
what?
is. Some people won't buy it or can't buy it, and you know what? That's what Spotify's for. I'm not.
And that's fine. Listen.
that would be a good parody. Can't buy me box set.
All right. Thank God you said set, because you can buy your box. You can buy box. Go to the city. No, but I mean, also like Rob, you just said Spotify. I can't afford $600 for the Paul McCartney single set, but you know what? I have a lot of fun listening to it on Spotify a lot.
I do too.
And it's great. So you know what? That's what it's for. And hey, if like we're all getting older and maybe our ears aren't
Speak
as
for
attuned.
yourself.
Well, I'm thinking for myself. That's the next one. But quite frankly, I don't, sometimes I don't hear a lot of the sonic differences that people say they hear. And that's fine. So sometimes Spotify is great, but Revolver's my favorite Beatles album. So I had to have this no matter what.
Right. And I agree with that. And, there's other, the only band I really buy these box sets on are the Beatles. I have some Monkey stuff, and I'm on the edge of buying Headquarters. I don't like the fact they include the New York sessions in that, but that's a whole other show.
What?
A possible show.
Not this one, guys.
I know. I don't need 99 pounds. Okay. But anyway,
I do.
But
Really,
I don't really buy a lot of box sets. So, if I'm going to spend it, I'm going to spend it on the Beatles. So that's what you got to look at.
And we in our other preview show, we did say that when we did the unboxing, we don't have to bring it up here again, other than to say that the box itself is gorgeous. The box, they did a lot of detailed work on it. I think they paid attention to detail on the box set. Like we said, the hair on the book and even the I forgot what they call it already. I read it somewhere with the Revolver on the cover where you only see it under light. Just incredible stuff that I think was very well done. The book in this is probably the best book we've ever seen. I think the White Album probably rivals it a little bit, but this book I think was so good. and so detailed and
Yes.
great pictures. My God.
I actually, had made a point when we were talking about the show, and and I know we were talking about the idea that our listeners, we love you all, viewers, however you want to put it,
Yeah, both.
that come to the show. Part of it is we talk about the product and talk about what comes out, but one thing that's fascinating is that I look at things like this that would come out back in the bootleg era before there were all of the sanctioned box sets, and there'd be this level of excitement and everybody kind of going like, hey man, did you hear this yet? Because it was underground, it was this, it was that, and there was sort of this, if you needed to know what you were listening to, damn it, you had to have done the research. At a certain point you were going to Lewison's recording sessions books. You were some of the bootlegs came with some decent literature, some of which has been contradicted by what we now know to be true. But it's hard to kind of now to leap into a project like this one and feel like we're shedding any new factual lights on it, which is okay. It's okay to not have to do that, but it's a credit to them, really. They've done an amazing job of
Kevin Howlett did this one.
Of what?
Kevin Howlett did this one.
Yes. I mean, and we know Kevin Howlett's work and how thorough and how good he is. But all the books have been sensational in these boxes in thoroughly covering the material.
Well, I think
that's
the
cool.
first one for Pepper was more of a trial and error. Yeah. Cultural stuff. So it was like, okay, let's see what sticks. And then they went into, okay, look, we've got, and no offense to anybody like Jeff Slate did a great essay for Sgt. Pepper book. And it was fascinating. But, as they keep going, I think these types of, I'm going to say types of Lewison-like history really helps. I love it. I mean,
I do too. My only qualm was, and I love Questlove. I thought he had too many pages to write. I mean, I know who he is. We know who he is. He's the band leader on Jimmy Fallon, right?
But more importantly, he's the Oscar-nominated director for Somersault.
Right, and so
Oscar-winning director. I'm sorry, not nominated.
So I just thought it should have been. I know where his status is in the music world, and he has a lot of respect, and he's kind of cool with all different types of music, and I understand why the Beatles would have him write that, or Apple. But I thought it went on a little too long.
I mean, when they asked me, I was like, you know what, guys, give it to Questlove.
Yeah, well, you're that way, Tony. You're good that way.
I'm just, you want to know something, and I'm not meaning this to sound racist or anti-racist, at however you want to put it, but if they would have asked Tony, and I'm not saying, I'm just saying, if they asked the white guy, and I don't mean it against any races, I think being an African American and talking about, and a younger African American, because he is younger than us, I think.
Yes.
I think it's the cultural aspect to him is very important, that side to look at, because it shows that the Beatles had an effect on. Yes, he's a great instrumentalist. He plays many things he's done, but again, he coming from a different point of view as the typical white guy who likes the Beatles.
Two things you can equate it to, and again, in a really positive way. I mean, over the years, I've had the good fortune doing projects where we work with Daryl McDaniels from DMC, and Daryl is an avid Beatles fan, hardcore. And think about the inclusion of, Whoopi Goldberg in 8 Days a Week.
I was going to say that.
It was so important to have that perspective.
Correct. We can't give it.
Not right. I mean, not just an African American person, but a young black girl growing up being an avid Beatles fan and being, that's kind of the cool thing about that too. Is it's that whole Beatle concept of like, the unification idea. The music unifies. So I think that
the Beatles won't play segregated audiences.
Right.
Right.
But you know what? So like, for instance, in the book, I'm only mentioning this now because it's not really specific to a song, because we'll explain how we're going to do that in a little bit. But like in the forward, Paul says, love you too, and I want to tell you, mark George's steady advance in songwriting. Very telling, especially since a lot of the book, which we'll get to later when we go through each song, back up or actually debunk a lot of myths in terms of George and John and Paul's relationship, which we heard about in the Get Back film in that secret cantina conversation. But there's a lot of cool stuff in here, and I love the fact that Kevin went back to several sources and years to get hindsight and in period quotes from the Beatles about this album, and that's it. I just think it really
very important.
Yeah,
very important. But we'll come to that idea in a little while. But I mean, Paul's up and down with that. I mean, we've also seen text now of
I know
the board meeting at the end of 1969 where Paul saying, well, we gave you that space on Abbey Road because now your songs are finally good enough.
Yeah.
We didn't think your songs were good enough before. So Paul runs hot and cold. Personally, I think we knew, from we've known for a while that John and Paul really didn't run away from helping on George's compositions. In the Get Back film, you see them, contributing to George's stuff also. And, maybe George felt not enough, but there's some thoughts on George but anyway, go ahead.
Listen, I'm going to just say this right now. You can't tell me that I Need You is not as good as anything on the Help album that John and Paul wrote.
Absolutely. It's right up there. It's right.
Yeah. So, so even as early as that, and Don't Bother Me is, I'm sorry, but, it's one of my favorite tracks on Meet or With the Beatles. So,
right.
Maybe George didn't take himself seriously at that time. And again, this is a different show, and
it's also George Martin.
Yeah, of
also
course. There's a whole lot of factors.
A lot of other factors.
I do like the fact that Paul did mention it in the forward.
Yes.
And there is history in the book to show goodwill toward George. Put it that way.
Also, the thing about the book, we were just talking about the cost. This book, if it's a standalone book, I'm not sure if it's a $50 book, but it's a $30 book.
$35. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and maybe they add more pictures to it, maybe, for that specific era. But, the book is very good, and each book has been good in all of the releases. And you got to count that into the fact that things might cost more because the book is so good.
We should point out very quickly, we talked about this in the unboxing. We should mention it now. Any of you who've not purchased your copy or you're not sure which format you want to get, one thing that I was happy with was that the CD and LP configurations were both the same size. They're not the same width, but they're the same size. You got the book in full size.
Yes.
In both editions, which is very cool. So
I agree. And I think that helps sell it too.
I think so too. Yeah.
I wouldn't want this book shrunk down to a CD book.
No.
So,
although, anyway. So that being said, we finally got to really listen. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I mean, we talked about older ears, and a lot of our listeners and viewers are older, and a lot of them are young. So it runs the gamut. But I will say, I listened to this with headphones on, and in order to really notice the differences, because I A/B'd this with headphones.
Yeah.
So, and when you do that, and when you read the book, and when you read other stuff on the internet that really did some great work on this, Mike Carrera, who was on the Daily Beatles site talking about things, between them all, you really get to experience this in a different light. So, on that note, what we're going to do, folks, is we're going to throw out each song. We're going to pass it to each one of us, and then, for instance, Rob will take the first song, Taxman, and we'll talk about everything about Taxman that we thought the outtakes, if there was something in the book that we saw on it, and the regular disc. So this way we won't have to bore you by saying, here's disc 1, here's disc 2. I think we will just say right now that the mono disc, which is a total different recut, is wonderful. I don't think we have to go through every song on that.
No, but it's the same exact thing if you bought the box set in 2009. I mean, there's not a lot of difference.
No, it's a separate recut.
It's a separate recut. Right?
Really? I didn't really notice the difference on that.
Oh, yeah. It's much brighter. Much brighter.
Well, brighter could be EQing more than anything.
But it's not.
This is a brand new cut from the tapes, an analog cut from the tapes.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. And it's wonderful. I mean,
I found it superior. I found it brighter. I found it sounded like it was less reliant on post-production. Just sounded like a straight cut that has all the brightness.
But you guys got the vinyl version. I mean, the vinyl versions, right? I got
the CD.
Oh, you got the CD too?
is still,
So anyway,
yeah. Okay. So let's talk about the songs.
I just want to just add one more thing before we start this, and this fact that I thought the Let It Be box set compared to the other ones, I thought it was a step down slightly because there was so much they could have added and didn't. And I think they sort of regathered themselves and said, okay, we're going to put stuff that's on the anthologies in the box set because it really should be part of it. So you don't have to go to the anthology to do comparisons.
Sure,
and Let It Be, they didn't move any of that stuff over into the Let It Be box set. So I just want to say that I'm glad they went back and said, okay, we'll take some of the anthology releases, and they sound a lot better now. The mix is different.
They do.
The durations are different. It's I really like what they did with it. So I just wanted to say that because I was disappointed with Let It Be tremendously. I thought, considering what was available, when we know it's available.
Rob, there you go. But I mean, you just hit the key difference. We're among the group of hardcore fans who, unless somebody was flipping through the New York Times and finding the articles about the 500 reels, we're the ones that know what was available.
Yeah, I know that.
So other people, they bought the Let It Be box. They saw the Get Back anthology.
Oh, sure.
After seeing the Get Back anthology, they might have been like, well, just as well that all wasn't on the box set.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about, but there was some songs that just missed.
But you know what, though? That's what I said at the top of the show. We know what could have been on Let It Be. We don't know what could have been on this.
Precisely.
Right, but I'm glad they went back to the anthology stuff and folded over, so it's all part of one. Because with Abbey Road, for example, there was someone put out, it was a 500 count version where they took everything that was available, Rock Band stuff and everything, made 4-disc set out of it, and it was very, very cool. I thought that some stuff was also left off Abbey Road, but that didn't bother me as much as it did Let It Be. This is so they said, okay, let's bring it back so it's one box set.
Right.
So okay, I'm going to take this box set. We're going to go on the road, and this is all I'm going to listen to. That's why they like I said, like Taxman starting off, the album. The Anthology 2 version is a nice version, but this version goes on a little bit longer. The mix is peppier, I think, than it's also 27 years, so that's part of it also. The technology has changed a lot, and this is the first one of using the new technology. So I was, what I would have liked, and Mitch and I saw it when we went to the listening party, Giles Martin went track by track for Taxman, instrument by instrument, deleting instruments along the way, which is what his father did in the Sgt. Pepper special in '87. I wish that was on here.
That could have been on the Blu-ray as a video.
Yeah, because it's just something
video.
When we heard that, Mitch, and it was just to me. Yeah. It just shows the genius of the Beatles and how they did this on a 4-track,
and the genius of the Peter Jackson,
right? And how the new technology is going to be really fun for Rubber Soul, especially because Rubber Soul's never had a really good stereo mix. So
you mentioned Taxman. I mean, you
Yeah.
mentioned the Anthology 2 version. In general, what do you have to say?
I just liked it a lot. I think it works out very well, and I also like the fact that they went in sequential order of how how the songs were recorded in the order. So technically, Taxman isn't the first song that they recorded, but it's also the first one on the album. So that's what we go with, and I think it's a very strong mix. I was very happy with it. I really enjoyed everything about it. I was, like I said, I'm glad they pulled it over. It's take 11, so, I have no
What do
problem
you
with
think
it.
about? The regular mixed. I mean, the new stereo mix and anything else.
No, I mean, like I said, the stereo mix was nice. The mono mix, I didn't notice as much as you did, Tony, but I was happy with what they did with Taxman. I was very happy with it, actually.
Tony,
I thought it was cool that they, like Rob, I thought it was cool that they included that that version and running a bit longer, etc. The only thing I'll say about Taxman when it comes to folks who are relying on streaming services, I mean, you listen to Taxman, Paul's bass is just outstanding, and you already start to hear the effect of the Peter Jackson. You hear the drum, spatialness of the drums. The other thing I will say is twofold. There is two-part. I don't think this is because of the Peter Jackson stuff. I don't think it's digital artifacting, but I do think that because the spatial relations have changed with everything, there is this little bit of a feeling through the entire CD of like a flanging effect. There's almost like a 150th of a millisecond, of a weird.
see, I don't hear that
slapping. Sometimes it's in there. It's not enough to be bothersome unless I feel like I'm noticing it and it's creating a little bit of a difference for me. But anyway, but be careful when you're listening to it on streaming services, because the bass is overwhelming.
Yeah.
When you put it on Spotify, you might be like, oh hell, this is the new mix. Don't take the streaming service version at face value for what the new mix of Revolver sounds like.
Listen, headphones on with a CD player.
Yeah,
or
get the
somehow.
CD, listen to it on phones,
it's amazing.
Whatever. Have your friends come over the house, have a party like Rob would, listen to Revolver,
Yeah, but Rob, don't forget, Rob's parties only listen to the White Album. So.
That's right. That's all we do.
Sorry to go.
But you know what? A lot of people are complaining that the amp hum is gone in the new mix. I don't care.
Right.
Who cares?
I like that the amp hum is gone in the new mix.
The only thing I will say is that the cowbell is a little mixed very low. I like the cowbell, not because of Will Ferrell, but I like the cowbell. It sounds very clean. And in the book in 1987, George said he was happy to have Paul play the solo and happy it was Indian inspired.
Yeah.
So you know what? It's the Beatles.
We gotta do a routine of Christopher walking in on Giles Martin. I gotta have more cowbell.
More cowbell. Tony, why don't you take Eleanor Rigby?
Yeah. Okay. I found, and again, don't get me wrong, I'm really, 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 really happy that there was a new stereo mix of this done. I do feel that the "I'll look at all the lonely people" parts in Eleanor Rigby are lopsided.
Oh, really?
When my head went this way, like each time they come on with look, I'm like, where are you? Where are you? The strings and his freaking lead vocal. I mean, there was a comment about, and I forgot where, I just heard it recently, about listen to Paul's vocals. They're passionate, like on this record. And even though Eleanor Rigby is a quiet song, or is a not really, I guess you're right. It's not a quiet song.
No.
The strings are in your face.
Yeah, the psycho strings are crazy.
Paul's vocal is very right at you, and the new mix what I love about the new mixes is they because of the technology being there now, they can bring things up front without you always having to sacrifice what's behind. It seemed like with the early stereo mixes, you brought one thing up, you had to lose something else. Now it's like you can bring that vocal up strong and not feel like you're losing the strings because you've got the vocals up.
Yeah.
So, and that's my, and the conversation before the outtake of the
I
to
love it.
vibrato or not to vibrato.
And he's like, I don't know. I don't hear much.
It's
love that.
hysterical. And what does he say? Oh, all that learning, or something like that. And you don't know if that's a comment almost to like the orchestral players, like, oh well, here's all your schooling, right down the crapper. He can't even hear a difference.
I do love the.
But those orchestra guys knew the difference, though. That was the thing.
They did, but when it comes down to the human ear, and when it comes down to Paul McCartney, who's not an average ear,
right?
Paul's still going, I don't know. You guys tell me.
But they're not as the orchestra's players don't come off as stuffy.
Not at all.
Always thought when they come into a Beatles session.
Yeah, not at all.
Cool.
Not at all.
Well, and those are rock and roll strings.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And the instrumental is is just a trip. I mean, it's just But anyway,
one thing I really appreciate is the talk between George Martin and the musicians and Paul McCartney concerning the whole sound of that song. And I just like listening to that type of thing when when you have something like the box set like this. This is the type of stuff you want to hear. More talk, actually. More talk, but that's a whole other show.
Right.
But I really appreciate it. There's probably more there that they probably cut out just because you don't want to have too much talk, of course. But I really appreciate it, and the backing track is just incredible. I mean, it's just it just sounds. They went back. We know what they did for the anthology too. We know what they did for Love. This sounds even better.
What I Did for Love. Sorry.
What I Did for Love. Yes.
You know what? What I love about it, first of all, it's great balance to me. I know, Tony, you said you're a little off kilter, but Paul is now in both ears of the headphones. What I researched, and what is really cool, if you want to do this, listeners and viewers, go to the old mix, any old mix, a stereo mix, and listen in headphones. And in the beginning, Paul is in both ears, as with the "I'll Look at All the Lonely People." As soon as he says Eleanor Rigby, Rob,
I'm there. Don't worry. Okay. I know what happened.
As soon as he says Eleanor Rigby, he says L in your left ear, and then the rest of it pans over to the right.
That's funny.
It is weird, and now with the new one, I'm pointing like I have headphones on. Now with the new mix, you can't really make out that mistake, so to speak. That pan.
They fixed the mistake.
It's so cool though, because now you really, and we thought the song track version was great. I think this is better than the song track.
Yeah. No.
The other thing is, I was very, it was weird. In the book, it says that Jane Asher actually turned Paul onto Vivaldi. John said that in an interview. And he said that Eleanor Rigby was inspired by Winter One Allegro non molto. So, all because of Jane Asher. We had a whole show on, Jane Asher's influence on Paul's writing, but we didn't do it like this in this regard. So maybe she had a little bit to do with the influence of Vivaldi on introducing him to it. But I love this. I absolutely love this mix. It just is great. Great balance.
Cool.
So I'm Only Sleeping. To me, another fantastic balancing job. The drums and the bass are so much more prominent. The yawn is louder, which is true. Which is cool. And what I love about it, and especially, with the context of the whole album, as we heard in the outtakes, it was recorded sped up, knowing that they were going to slow it down, which is so cool and so hard to do in a lot of cases, as you read in the book. But the instrumental where it's sped up is so cool. It just sounds like a different mix. And then when they slow it down, the count-in is even like 1, 2, because obviously they knew it. Yeah. But I just love this. The outtakes were really good on this one. I think it's a great mix. Rob, what do you think?
I thought the mix was really good on this, only because it's when we first heard this, there's how many mixes of "I'm Only Sleeping" over the years. This is a new mix, and this stands out in many different places with the backwards guitars. I don't want to say cleaner; it's the wrong word, but they seem to sound more. They're not different, but they're just
More prominent?
Yeah, you know what? It doesn't sound like a backwards guitar as much.
Oh, okay.
And we know it's a backwards guitar, but it sounds more natural than some of the other stereo mixes of "I'm Only Sleeping." So
Yeah, I do agree with that. That's interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, because that's the way George wrote it. He wrote it backwards to make it sound forwards.
Yes.
So, it wasn't like he just played it and they said reverse it. He spent 12 hours doing it. So
Yeah.
He should get co-writing credit, by the way, on that. But that's a whole other thing with Lennon McCartney. And,
Yeah.
So, but I was impressed with that a lot. It's, like I said, it's another mix to add to the canon of all the different mixes of "I'm Only Sleeping."
Tony?
I think the outtakes, I think, were brilliant. I think that early take, I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it, but I almost got a Beach Boys-ish vibe from the first earliest take of it. And it's not Paul, but I felt that, I don't know, there was a vibe there. Take two, still very experimental. For take two, I felt Pepper. It could have been on Pepper when you hear it in that, here's where I thought you saw the gap of the difference between the projects. Getting towards a style that would show up on Pepper. And then the whole, and if I'm not mistaken, we hear the OK Herb. And
that's not on this.
Where is that?
That's actually Dr. Robert.
No, oh yeah, right. I'm so sorry. Yeah, but we finally hear that on that. But so that's for later. But anyway, but
we
yeah,
might hear that actually.
Well, actually, Tony, I agree with you about the fact that this, "I'm Only Sleeping." If you want to think, okay, what could have been on Pepper? "I'm Only Sleeping" would be definitely one of those songs.
Yeah.
I don't think "A Little Rigby" would fit on Pepper, but "I'm Only Sleeping" would.
Yeah,
maybe.
So anyway,
all right, Rob, why don't you take "Love You Too"?
"Love You Too." Wow, the outtakes changed my opinion of the song a little bit. I like it a lot more. As much as the tuning part of the opening of "Love You Too," it has a cool feel to it. I like the fact that it had a strumming guitar, at least in the demos or the earlier takes. And it's one thing about literally every song in this album. There's an earlier take that's just really different, and they knew right away that we had to change it. As Beatles, we have to change this version for the most part. And this album has so many of them. They didn't have it on a lot of other albums where, the arrangement is so different.
But typical Beatles, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I will just for a second. Typical Beatles, every time they do a different arrangement, we always find that the finished arrangement is really much better and that they knew what they were doing.
Oh yeah, but usually their first take could have been, if they weren't,
could have been released. Yeah,
it could have been released as is.
And we didn't know about the final.
"Can't Buy Me Love" and "And Your Bird Can Sing" I hold as two examples. Even though "And Your Bird Can Sing" in its final version is one of my favorite Beatles songs. Yeah. But anyway,
no, I think that's one of the things, and that, and this song especially, it changes the whole sitar thing which I think was very important to have in this album. That leads to Pepper. I'm not sure how we there's not many songs, if you think about it, in the Beatles canon that had actual sitars. Everyone thinks there's tons of them, but there really isn't.
No.
And this song is purposely made to have that sitar open. They could have easily cut that whole tuning part and started it apart, and then the mono mix goes much longer, which not many people realize. So I was actually very impressed with the "Love You Too" early takes. take one sounds like more like a demo, and then
Like an Escher demo.
yeah, almost. And then take 7, McCartney's backing was much different too. So, I like the way this album was recorded real fast.
Yeah.
And all their changes along the way were perfect. It wasn't like, well, we made the wrong thing there. No, everything worked perfectly. So, and it was quick. It's not like they said, okay, let's wait a week and see what happens. No, the next day, the next minute, they were changing it. So, I was very impressed with that about Love You Too. It's not one of my favorite George Harrison songs, but I like the outtakes, and of course it fits perfectly on this album. So,
Tony?
Yeah, we're talking about the whole, like, the take one thing. I could see, and I love this song. I always have, ever since I was a kid. I could see where John and Paul, and especially Paul, would be going, yeah, his writing is not as good as ours. By the demo, by that take one. George knows in his head that this song is going to take that turn. I think he knows he's going to want to bring a sitar and bring Indian instrumentation into it. Once you do, you've broken barriers, you've added whole new elements. But I think listening to that song is just an acoustic bum dum bum dum bum dum. It's not Beatles standard. George knew it was going to be, and my feeling is that the finished product holds up to anything that George and Paul wrote. But I do think that here, what is that John and Paul wrote? Yeah. But hearing Granny Smith take one, I kind of felt like, okay, now I maybe hear where, like, George coming in and saying, well, here's one I'd like to do, where George and Paul might have gone, okay.
Yeah, where's this going?
Because they didn't know what was in his head.
But
like George didn't know what was in Paul's head when maybe he brought in Eleanor Rigby.
I have to counter that, if you don't mind.
No, of course not.
Because if you go by the way this album was recorded, we're talking Tomorrow Never Knows was first. And if you don't think that George and Paul and George Martin said, where the hell is this going to be the first song recorded for Tomorrow Never Knows with the one chord drone? I mean, so I'm not sure.
But I think that one chord drone at least was
Beatles.
No, but it was the opposite. That one chord drone was extremely experimental and avant-garde and was a little bizarre. So I think probably George Martin went, all right, there's something here we could do. Whereas Granny Smith just kind of plods along, and
until you get to the finished product, right?
Until you get to where you hear George's vision.
Right.
So, to me, I'm just looking at it as this is something that started out pre-production as kind of like, ooh, where's this going to go? You hear the finish one, you're like, oh, that's where it's going to go.
What'd you think of the finish one?
What's that?
What'd you think of the finish one?
The freaking mix is gorgeous.
The clarity.
It's just majestic. George's vocal, the instrumentation. I'm glad we lost the high harmony from Paul there. But
on take 7, yeah.
But oh my God, the finished product sounds awesome. Love
it. The cool thing is, at the time, don't forget, Painted Black was just about to be released.
Right.
And Brian Matthew, in the book, it said Brian Matthew told George, you can't play the sitar anymore on your songs because everybody's doing it now. And John shot back, yes, he can, which is kind of cool. And that's a period thing. So,
that's fun.
That's not later on. That's in the period. So, I think they were very tolerant of it. And John liked the experimentation. But the acoustic demos are great. And like you said, the high harmony did not fit from take 7. So.
But it's nice to hear it because I've read about that,
right?
And I was like, oh, I wonder what that sounds like because Paul always sounds good with George, but it didn't match the song.
No. Well, he didn't really do a harmony. He sort of did he was like parallel with him, but in a different key. It was weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's fine.
Yeah.
I'm gonna happen to be my wedding song, Here, There, and Everywhere.
Aww.
The harmonies are so much more in the mix, which is great. The drums are present. Paul harmony at the end is up too. in the book they said it was inspired by God Only Knows. And one thing it says in the book that it made me think. It said that it has a preamble. All right, here, there, and everywhere. To lead a better life, I need my love to be here. Just like If I Fell. And if you think about it, there's not many Beatles songs that have preambles. Maybe Do You Want to Know a Secret?
Well,
But
John tended to write the preamble much more than Paul.
Yes.
Because, If I Fell, Help, John would have that preamble and then leave it.
There's no preamble in Help.
The beginning is Help,
Now,
Help, I need
I'm
somebody.
talking about like a If I Fell in Love with You, would you promise? And then they lead into the song, like You'll Never Know How Much I Really Love You. And then like this, To Lead a Better Life. There's not many songs that they really do that. But this song, we all know what we wanted since we heard it on the Real Love CD single. We all thought, even 95 or 6, whatever, it was gonna sound amazing. It did. And you know what? This lived up to the hype. I love it. Rob?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, you think of that version that's on Real Love, the single, I like the trickery of taking, the finished version and matching it to the rehearsal version.
Yeah.
But I like this better, the rehearsal, the outtake version. And I love the sound of the stereo version in this mix because there's so much to do with this song, and it's easy to blow it, and they didn't. So I think that's the best way, because you got these harmonies, first of all, and then you got Paul with this really great vocal, and then it's in not triplets, but the chord progression goes like G to B minor, and it goes up a scale. And, that you can easily get lost with the mix, and it's there. It's really a good mix. It's one of my favorites of the whole remixed canon of this Revolver album.
Tone?
Sounds magnificent. You mentioned the drums, and I love Ringo's that soft touch that's now brought up in the mix. It just sounds brilliant. So very, very, very nice. The outtake pass is interesting. It feels a little bit stark because you're missing some of the backing vocals, but
the quality of the outtake.
Quality.
And Paul's voice on that demo or the first take is like,
the first pass.
Whoa.
Wow.
It was really up there.
It's that idea of that's where I read it. In Uncut Magazine, there's a whole big thing about the Revolver, and I think it's Giles who's talking about the passion, that this is a powerfully delivered record.
Yes.
And even though Here, There, and Everywhere is this beautiful ballad, Paul's voice is very engaged in it. There's no kicking back and being schmaltzy. It's
not quite falsetto.
No.
But it's not his regular. It's just
right. Sounds great.
It's just great. Rob, you want to take Yellow Sub?
Wow.
I knew that was going to come.
Yellow Submarine, when we think of it as, a nice children's song that Ringo sings. And then we hear this thing that John was doing, sounding like Bob Dylan, very much like Bob Dylan. It wasn't like, he did like You've Got to Hide Your Love Away as Dylan. This was like he got a tape from Dylan and he was replaying it to himself. I was very impressed with Yellow Submarine. The early takes that led up to, the song we know and love. And I'm so intrigued. Out of everything on this album, the versions of Yellow Submarine, these early takes or whatever you want to call them, to me is the eye-opener of how the insight of what was going on this record. Because it was just so... Imagine this was on this record. It wouldn't have fit in this version. No. Because it should have been on Rubber Soul. Or even Help, if you want to, say that, but it wasn't ready, obviously, at that point. So to me, when the first time we heard it, Mitch, I just stood there, my mouth open. Like,
I think everybody did.
Yeah, because we've never heard about that version.
No, that's what blew my mind. How the hell did that get under? I guess they had to go through everything they could find, and I don't know if that. Sorry, I mean interrupt, Rob, but if that John snippet is in the studio, like
it sounds too
Where did they
clean
find
not
that?
to be. It sounds like, it sounded like one of John's demos, which he never properly recorded any of them, for the most part.
No, but you gotta remember how much they could clean those up though now, Rob.
Yeah, but it sounded like you know what it sounded like? It sounded like he was sitting on the floor playing and strumming like he was at a campfire.
Like Strawberry Fields demo.
Yeah, that's a better demo. But to me, it's just like wow. And then parts of Yellow Submarine come out of what John was singing. So this whole thing that was a Paul song is, well, we find out it's not. But at the same time, it's not exact. And I always thought that when I heard the first time I heard this, that John was writing about his dad. The dad goes out to sea. He was a seaman. And maybe it was a false, fictional thing of that, but that's what I thought. And he had just seen I think he had just seen his father at that point. He had a meeting with him. It didn't work out very well. It's like, what do you want? But that's what I got the impression of. And to me, and how was this not known about all these years? And,
blows my mind that it wasn't known about.
Not in the Lewison book.
No, it's not. And
no.
But also the Lewison book now is 35 years old, and I'm sure they've maybe found other tapes, and obviously even at the anthology they found tapes. So
that's why there's part of me that feels like this was not that this, I don't know if it came from the estate or if it came from, but I just feel like this was not from Abbey Road Studios. It was recorded at Cavendish, or it was recorded but who knows? I don't know. But,
yeah,
Cavendish, that's Paul.
well, that's what I meant. I'm saying it was recorded at Paul's house, or it was recorded at, I don't know where John was living at the time. Where was John? Weybridge, yeah.
Weybridge.
Yeah. So who knows? Maybe it was recorded on one of their 4 tracks, or I don't know. But anyway.
I was very impressed with it. It stands alone. If you don't know the finished version of Yellow Submarine, this song stands alone. And this, I'd like to see the chord sheet and a lyric, like a fake book version of something musically, maybe. And the only thing that gets me about Yellow Submarine, and this is the only time they did this, they followed the mono mix on the stereo mix, where the guitar strum comes in I like that there's quietness in the town.
I like this version now.
But I don't like I never liked the mono mix where it comes in right away. I like the stereo mix where it was quiet for that 1 second. And they copied it on this stereo mix, but that's the only thing they copied. They, like on Taxman,
you're wrong. A Life of Ease.
Oh, well, okay, that part. Okay, but on Taxman they don't follow the cowbell coming in on the mono mix. It doesn't match. There's a couple of other things like that too where you're right. I forgot about the Life of Ease, but I'm not sure why they did it on the stereo version of of Yellow Submarine, but they didn't do it for all the others. So because usually he was matching the mono mix. That's what Giles has been doing. But it didn't always match on Yellow Submarine. I like the stereo version better. It's cleaner, it's nicer. But my opinion changes a lot of how the song was put together now, and it's nice to hear the backing noises. They're mixed in a lot higher, I think, now in the new version that we have for this album. So there's a lot of insight into that song about production wise and everything, and I think they, I like the clean part. I like the Life of Ease part. I like all that stuff, but I just didn't like the opening strum in the new stereo version.
Yeah, I didn't mind. I like it a lot.
I like it better too. Yeah, personally.
Okay.
I just think I think that that second or the third outtake, it's like that, like almost like a sped up. Sounds like almost a sped up master in that.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. And
like
that's
a different key, yeah.
The effects are heavier on that one. It's listed as the effects, heavier effects version or whatever. That's kind of a cool listen, a little odd, but a cool listen. That first John demo, it's not a song, in my opinion. It's just an idea.
Right.
And I think I said 8 tracks or 4 tracks earlier, but the Beatles didn't have their personal 4 tracks yet. I don't know what they would have been recording on at home, but yeah, that was my only thought, was just that fast version is interesting and unique. But I really, really, really like the new mix. It's makes you love Ringo's vocal even more. I think on the stereo remaster remix. So anyway.
In the book, it does say from the period. There's an interview where they're talking about Yellow Submarine, and John says to Paul, "That's a collaboration. I remember you and me first did that. Even if we read it back then, we wouldn't have known that John did that little idea demo. We would have probably thought, okay, John just, Paul came in with the fantasy song, and John added some stuff to it like normal." But yeah, that it was revelatory. Just
that was mind-boggling.
Well, but also it becomes, there are certain songs that are Lennon-McCartney songs. This song now becomes a Lennon-McCartney song to me, like a Day in the Life, or From Me to You, or whatever, or She Loves You, where they were working together and they came up with something. It started in one place and ended up in not a totally different place, but a better place.
Yeah.
So, I think that's part of it. And also, if you look at the takes, there are 4 takes of Yellow Submarine. There are 4 takes of I'm Only Sleeping. Both have a similar feel with the backing tapes and the weird noises that John makes and stuff like that. It's
I think it's coincidence, but
it probably is. But I'm glad there's 4 takes. I wish there were 4 takes for every track, but that's but you don't count it to make it seem like it's better. We'll put it that way.
All right, Tony, you want to take She Said?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when it comes to the stereo remaster, it's just a dramatic improvement to me. I just love the feel of this new mix.
Yes.
It was the first of the remixes where I went, oh goodness, that's just freaking awesome. And then you go to the demo, you have to wonder if you're making me feel like my trousers are torn. If that really was, I mean, that could have really been a lyric. It might have just
knowing John, it was wordplay.
Stick something in that occupies the space. But it's funny, and the use of the word crap in there. Does he say crap in the first verse? It sounded like
I don't think so.
I played it through twice and could swear he's mumbling the word crap. But and you wonder at what point the middle 8 got fixed.
Yeah.
And it's, I also love the fact that on that other outtake, it's fun to hear them screwing around, especially during this session where Paul's supposed to have run out on them.
He's there.
Yeah, you bet he's there. And it's a killer instrumental track.
Yeah, it is.
It's a killer instrumental track.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about Paul being there, it doesn't sound like his bass playing, though. It's very... It's not... It's very... I don't want to say basic, but it's very...
It's not that basic.
Really not.
It's not that basic.
It's not like Taxman, where there was a little more finger.
Not every song calls for it. I mean, if you think about it, Tomorrow Never Knows, his playing is not complex. It's just impossible to replicate.
That's
I mean,
that's true. That's true. I was impressed with the fact that we find out that Paul was there. So because we were told by Paul that he had walked out. So maybe he got the song wrong, or maybe
no, maybe he probably did walk out.
But maybe it was after it was already kind of finished.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe he did the basic track and then something happened or whatever. But we know he's there. So it's nice to know that he was the bass player, because I always thought it was George.
Yeah.
So
well, if you listen in headphones, they have John and George's lead guitars in the left headphone now, which you do not get in any other mix, like earlier, and it just adds everything to this song. And also the punch in Ringo's drums. You know, the one thing I wanted to ask, and in the book it does say that the song was referred to in the Get Back Cantina conversation, and I looked up transcripts, I couldn't find it. When Paul and George are saying, "Look, we had to show George that you know he could have some input," I guess, because Paul walked out at one point, and they both say to each other, "Oh, she said," and John says, "Yeah, she said." That's what it says in the book, and I couldn't. If someone has I have to look in the Get Back book where it has the full transcript.
Yeah.
But it's definitely in this book, so I have to look at that. If anybody, does know, because I don't remember hearing it in the Get Back. I would have known if they would have mentioned a song, but whatever. It neither here nor there. This to me sounds like a different song. It really does.
Great.
I love it.
It's also another song where the two leads, or there are two guitars playing the leads.
Right.
And
they're in the left headphone now, and you could, other than the one playing in the right, and when you hear it, you'll never want to hear the headphone version of any other version earlier, because it just it's missing. You want it in the left, can, so to speak.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. So I guess it's up to me now with Good Day Sunshine.
Appropriate, since you've been talking about it not having any outtakes.
I mean, there's not much I want to say here. I don't think there's a lot to say on it. The one thing if you listen in the headphones at around 2 minutes, the drums abruptly stop in the new mix, while they other mixes they keep going in the left channel. So because this is not my go-to mix on this, because now I've heard it, and maybe in the car it'll sound different, but
you can't unhear it.
Yeah, I didn't like that because it stopped. No. Literally, the drums just stop, while they're doing good day, and in every other mix you just hear tap 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 tap.
Right.
I don't like it. So this is one song and there's no outtakes. In the book, it says there was 6 outtakes on the reel, and everybody keeps saying that there were only 3. So if there were really 6, and which Giles confirmed there were 3 when we talked to him, why are there no outtakes at all?
Because there's a difference between an outtake
and just a breakdown. It may not be anything different, but it would have been cool to hear even a breakdown. Now that especially since I don't love the mix, but.
Well, it'd be nice just because every other song has representation. Right. And even if it was a 1 minute bit, like the she said demo is only a minute, so it's an intriguing opening for the rest of how we're going to hear the song. But you're right. If there's something there, a minute and a half, it's only a 2 minute song anyway. So, I mean,
maybe there's some talking.
Even if there was some talking,
I don't mind. Let me hear the creative process, but whatever, it's fine.
That might have been the best thing, just have them talking about the song,
or just a minute of. Sorry.
Stop.
Thank God we have visuals now with our YouTube show.
Tony, what'd you think of it?
Again, you're very nice. I mean, I didn't mind the drums dropping out because it gave you the acapella, and the drums were for timing.
Oh, yes, they were, but we're used to it.
We're very used to it. But yeah, I didn't mind.
All right. Yeah. All right. So, Rob, you want to take Anya Bird Can Sing?
Anya Bird Can Sing. Wow. I like. The only thing I'm disappointed is that it goes over 2 discs, because you have to you have to line it up, because I really enjoyed the original version, the so-called laughing version, because the underneath version was, I thought, a great version. Easily could have been on the album, but actually it sounds more like Rubber Soul, but it could have easily been on this album as that version. And then they go back and they turn it into a Bird song.
Yeah.
And you on this mix, man, wow, you just notice that there are 2 guitars so much more than in the original mix that we know and love.
Right.
So that was one of my favorite parts about it. I'm glad they have the giggling version. I'm glad, like I said, this is stuff from, we've heard on other parts of the anthology series, and it's now part of this.
I
I
think it's
don't mind
longer
it.
though.
It is longer, and
Yeah.
that's the way it should be, because you know you don't want the exact same thing. So if it goes on a little longer, that's even better.
Right.
So I'm very happy with what they did with "And Your Bird Can Sing." You know, I like every version of this song. It's just, and then the version. This was the song with the extra verse, right? Was that the right one?
No.
No. Okay, I'm thinking of the. Oh, I'm sorry, wrong song. That was Dr. Robert. But yeah, so I enjoyed everything about what they did with the song. I'm glad there's 3 versions. I'm glad the giggling version's there. I'm glad the other version's there. I'm glad we hear the guitars better. I can't really. It's one of my favorite redos of this, and new insights into this song and this album is "And Your Bird Can Sing."
Cool. Tony?
So nice to hear the drums so pronounced in
Yeah.
the stereo remix, while again not detracting from everything else. I miss the hand claps.
Right.
The hand claps are not up
Not
as
as up.
much as I would like them to be. It's okay. It gives me a different version to listen to of one of my favorite songs. Again, like Rob said, I love that the giggling version's there. I love that we've had the clean version as an out fake, because people could take their systems and use kind of like a phasing to get rid of the giggles and give you the regular song, but to now have it for real. And then that other version that starts the third disc is really fun. I wrote down in my notes, it's the sludge version.
Ballsy.
It's ballsy, it's sludgy. I said it's prescient of things to come. It's not quite as experimental as Tomorrow Never Knows, but it's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah.
This interim thing between the giggle version and the final. This weird step. So anyway,
I love the harmonies over the solo.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
good
wish
point.
that was included in the final version. That's
Yes.
really cool. Sort of like a Nowhere Man when they do the harmonies. Or
I wonder if that's why they didn't do it.
Oh, that may be right. Maybe they don't want to replicate themselves.
Well, yeah, they did it on the outtake of Out of College, Money Spent, and they had in the outtake they had harmonies there that they took off.
Right.
So
But you know what? They did it again in Day Tripper.
That's true. They kept it there for Day Tripper. So yeah, good point.
But the one thing I will say is I do like the drier vocals of previous mixes better. They used a little bit of more of a, I'm not going to say the flange effect, but almost too much like ADT on here, which we know this album is famous for. But I do like the drier vocals a little bit better on previous mixes, but I like the mix of this better, if that makes sense. It's so much more powerful now.
Yeah.
So I have to put a plug in for the cartoons because they're mentioned in the book. Thank you, Kevin. They do have like a paragraph on the cartoon saying that it gave the song a new life when it was the opening of the 3rd season. So
We've talked, and I talked about I never really loved the cartoons growing up, but I do remember getting up to have them on, and that's probably what gave me such a great love for the song, which is interesting.
Oh yeah,
anyway,
very unusual song to put as the it's an album track. It's not like the other 2 seasons. So I like the fact that it's even that they allowed it to be mentioned in the book, because they never allow any cartoon stuff in there. But all right, so Tony, you want to take For No One?
Wow.
I have Tony.
Wow.
I swear to God, my first. It does. I know you can't see it, but the first word is wow.
Well, I'm reading your notes.
Oh, all right.
Hey, mine say wow too, but mine says wow twice.
Mine says wow backwards. It's it's one of my all-time favorite Beatle tracks. Actually improved. The instrumentation, especially the drums being fully in there in the mix. You hear every breath in the horn solo.
Yep.
You hear every bit of air coming out of that, and his vocal is so freaking intimate. It's just brilliant. And then to hear the instrumental take too, it's just it's just a beautiful song. I think it's one of Paul's masterpieces.
Oh, absolutely.
And yeah, it's a favorite in the remix. Definitely.
I like the remix a lot, and I agree with it's one of my favorite songs from Paul too. It's one of those songs where, you know, he did something the first verse and the last verse, and then he changes the last line, which I know there's a title for that, a word for it, besides genius, of course, but there is a technical word for that. But I like the way I like the instrumental part a lot because I automatically start singing, and you know, Eleanor Rigby, I do sing along on the backing track, but for No One, I sing along. It's one of those things that just captures you. I agree with you, Tony, about you hear Ringo's drums better. Yeah. I didn't really realize there were drums on it because they were mixed kind of low. This is a little bit higher, which didn't bother me at all. I thought, you know, it's such a cool song. You know,
so simple, but
it's groundbreaking.
It's more than simple, but it's perfect. I mean, it has to be that simple. But at the same time, you have this horn thing from Alan Civil, which he comes in the solo part in the middle, and then he brings the same thing over the end, just to remind you that the sadness of the solo happens at the end of the song too, which is also a sad part of the song.
Which is also classical in nature too, to return a theme, which is also, I mean, Paul's picking up from learning his classical music and learning more about classical, but it's also, I think it's just groundbreaking in terms of you didn't hear rock and roll songs that sounded like this yet. A year later, I won't say it's passé, but a year later, you've heard a bunch of stuff. You've heard Baroque sounding, you know, rock and pop songs, but you heard the influence by that point. That was the thing, you know. Yeah.
But you're right. This is such a song ahead of its time. But lyrically, for Paul, it's such a great lyric. You know, this is a giant step. This and Eleanor Rigby are two giant steps lyrically.
24 years old.
Yeah, for Paul, and if John is right about Eleanor Rigby, you know, that's a co-writing thing. But either way, the topic of both those songs are really serious, and they're kind of sad. You know, there's no one want to hold.
And would he get there again before like the 90s? No, no. I mean,
you know, I had no idea that Alan Civil was also part of the Day in the Life Orchestra.
Yes, he was.
I didn't know that, which is kind of cool. Also, I like the fact in hindsight that Paul connected the girl in this song to the girl in Another Day.
Interesting.
Cool. Yeah.
Did he say that?
He said it, in an interview. It's in the book. It's kind of cool. He said it, you know, he thought about it afterwards and said, you know, it's again in hindsight. So
it's in the Cozen book too.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have connected those two songs at all. You know, Another Day is about a lonely woman. For No One's about a woman who's left a guy and left him standing there alone.
I don't think it's that part of it. I think it's just the fact that you know, he's talking about the actions of people, you know, in that regard. I don't think he, you know, talk about the sentiment of it, but in any case, okay. All right. So, who did For No One? Tony. Rob, you want to do, or is it me?
You. I think it's you.
Me, Dr. Robert. Okay. Dr. Robert. Oh, wow. This is so super clean and so vocals, so upfront. There's so much, this is so much better balanced and powerful. I love in the outtakes that twice he sings Bob Robert.
Well, he sings it in the regular version too.
Yeah, but you can't really make it out. Right. Least, I know, you know, but also the drums in the outtake keep going in the well part.
Yes.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
Yes.
And like Tony mentioned earlier in the show, the OK Herb, which is only heard at the end of the mono mix of Yesterday and Today, is now busted. It's not, he doesn't say it. He actually says, okay, will, and then Paul whispers back, no, we won't. So the OK Herb for years, and like I think all together now, or whatever we saw it in, but like
every little thing.
Not me. I always said it doesn't sound like anything. I never I heard OK Herb, you know, I expected like Herb, like someone named Herb. You know,
Well, they always joked that it was about OK Herb, that they
Right.
oh
But he
well,
says,
that was
but it's like you know, it's kind of cool that the myth is
Yes.
busted.
I love that.
But I love this track. It's great.
well, you
Sounds
have to
good.
put that on there if you can, because look what they proved with Strawberry Fields. He definitely says cranberry sauce.
Yeah.
So this is another way to demythify the Beatles a little bit of stories that got started and then get picked up on, and then they continue, and then they get more strength in them, and then next thing you know, the Beatles are saying herb, no, it's herb, no, it's herb, no, it's herb it's hers potato chips, no.
It's
So,
hers.
yeah. So the thing that got me about this song is that they edited it down. They took a verse out, and I can understand why they did it, because it sounded too long, but at the same time, it wasn't a bad verse. They could have just redone the vocals, and they decided to edit it out. Instead of having a 3-minute song, it's now 2:15, I think. So
the Beatles songs were never 3 at that point, except for Ticket to Ride.
yeah, but I was just like, they could have redone the vocal, and they just chose to edit, which was so unusual. They normally didn't edit a song down. Like, they would edit different parts of a song maybe to make a new song or a new version of a song. But that was the thing that got me, because I'm listening to it, and then I realized, oh, this is a song where it just continues, and then they're going to edit it out, and I liked it. I liked it as a 3-minute song. I liked it.
But I think the well part comes in like another time too.
Yeah.
I think it's too much.
I wasn't bothered by it, but I understand where you're going with it. It's interesting how they made, again, another decision to cut it. It's another thing, or instead of trying to redo it, they just we're going to cut it this time.
Right.
So that's, to me, is something that, again, the decisions made as musicians to produce a record.
Tone?
I think it was cool. It's cool to hear like the non-ADT vocals,
Yes.
in the outtakes.
Yes.
I like hearing George's guitar work and the perspective it's in that version. But my big word here that I have in like bold is, this is some funky track.
Yes.
It's funk, man. It's that boosted drum thing makes the track just feel fun and funky, and just gives it a great vibe. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Cool. All right. Rob, you go with I Want to Tell You.
First of all, disappointed there's only one take.
Well.
And I'm disappointed it's a short version. One of my favorite songs to play on the guitar, because the riff is so funky, I guess we wanted to call it. And one thing I wish they had done with both this and Dr. Robert, which comes before it, Dr. Robert fades out, though it goes to a chord that ends cold, and this fades up. I wish they had, especially this version, where it starts cold instead of the fade up. And that was my only real concern. It's like,
the outtake does.
Yeah,
the outtake does, but it's it's not a full version. So
right.
that was my qualm about it. So
I can digitally fix it for you, and I'll give you a version that doesn't fade out.
You're the man, Tony. Thank you.
You're welcome. You can play it on your show. It's called
Thank
the
you.
Tony Remix.
Thank you. The Tony Truguardo remix.
There you go.
Not approved by Apple.
But just don't say that on the show.
Yeah. So to me, this is one of my favorite George Harrison songs. Just the whole, everything about it is good. He had a second middle eight, which George was the only Beatle that did that. The other two would repeat the middle eight. George would write a second middle eight. This
giving you a middle 16, actually.
Oh, yes. Be careful with the 16, though,
16 will get you 20. Anyway.
That's right, yeah.
You're still beautiful in your mind.
There you go.
We're doing Marx Brothers next week. So, to me, I really have always enjoyed the song. I like the remix. There's not a lot to remix in this song. It's a very basic song. The piano is a little bit hotter, but not by much. And it's a basic straightaway song. There's not a lot of effects on the guitars where they sound, birdsy. There's, it's like Dr. Robert or Enya Bird can sing. So to me, it's one of my favorite, like I said, George Harrison songs. I just wish there was a another outtake from it, because I just, especially since it was George. He only had 3 songs on here. Unless maybe George at one point said, "I don't want any outtakes from I Want to Tell You" released, and he told that to Olivia, and then
There you go.
Tony?
Not much there. Just very nice remaster.
Yeah,
Love it.
for me, it seems like a little bit less of a fade in on the new mix. Much better clarity and balance, and I think the harmonies are more present. What I love most about this is the outtakes, the whole conversation between John and George, where John just says, "You never have a title for anything. Ever since Don't Bother Me, or since Don't Bother Me, you never have a title for any of your songs."
That is a funny bit.
I mean, he's not being mean or anything.
No,
it's
very funny.
He says, "What are you calling it?" And he's like, "Lack sentiment." It's like, you never have a title for anything. So it's kind of cool. But the one thing is that in Beatles Monthly Book in 1966, when they were talking about this track, and in general on the album, George does say, quote, that John and Paul gave me an awful lot of encouragement. So, that sort of debunks some myths too.
Yep.
So anyway, Tony, you want to do Got to Get You Into My Life?
The remaster sounds freaking great. Paul's bass, damn, is just what I wrote. The horn stabs, magnificent. The first, the first take, I love the chatter. I'm trying to figure out what it is they're talking about in terms of the fade that they're discussing and what they're going to go. John's little DDs in there, brilliant. But the remake,
that's cool.
That remake with the fuzz guitar in for the horns, I freaking love. I love it. To me, I know you argue, I know the horns are a big part of the development of the band and they want to go to Memphis but I could have just had that. That could have been on the album and I would have been like, that's a great Beatles song. I love it. And then the instrumental where like the different elements are kind of combined in there a little bit. Just great. And you hear Paul's guide vocal in the background if you listen, which is cool.
Yep.
But it's just, again, very, very nice collection of versions of that. And that's it.
Rob?
I agree with Tony with the fact that the Paul's bass is just standout in the stereo mix. I'm glad they had the Anthology 2 version in there. It's a little different, but I've always liked that version. I think that could have been a version. But then, what do we get? We got a second version that could have been just as good and placed anywhere on this album as that version. The guitars on it, you see, okay, where do the horns come from? And they come from that guitar arrangement, which changes the song to me because it becomes more of a group song, even though, the guitar solo from George is very short. But to me, that version with the rotating guitars, as I like to call it, to me, it's a much more of a group version, where the horn version obviously is the version we all know and love, but I like the way they play the guitars on that because it just keeps going. It doesn't stop. And I was really impressed with those guitars on it. And, we didn't know about that version either. So I was very impressed with both outtakes and then, of course, the final version. So I can't really complain about anything about this song. But like I said, it becomes more of a group song now because I always thought Got to Get You Into My Life was more of not a solo song, but it's like For No One, Eleanor Rigby, they're more whole separate for the most part. Not all of it, but
right.
For me, it's better balanced. Nobody here mentioned the drum fills are finally, you can hear them.
Yeah.
It was so wimpy in the every other version. Now they're finally up in the mix and a lot more ballsy. I love that. I think the fuzz guitar was great, but ultimately, I think Tony, as we know, as you said, the development of the band and the horns, the brass was great. Ultimately, I think they made the right choice. The backing vocals, like while they're pretty, I think they would have wimpified the song a little bit. If
And the
Whippified is a
ocarina
word.
and the ocarina solo that was left out, I think would have been a little. Sorry.
But
That's something different. That's another version.
Yeah, if Whippify is a word, the song. I mean, the song has balls. That's all there is to it. I love it. John had made a comment in like I think 1980 that it was about Paul's acid trip. Paul has then countered with no, it wasn't.
It was
as
about
bad as
marijuana.
that. It was just about pot.
Yeah.
Maybe it was about acid, but Paul's got his reputation.
I thought that John said it was marijuana. I thought it was.
No, he did. He does mention acid, but it doesn't matter. It's a trip. It's not just about a girl like every other thing. It's
well, to me, if you didn't tell me that it was a drug trip, I would think it was a nice love song. That,
and I'm sorry, writing a love song to your dope is really weird, man. But
you want to know something?
Paul, wherever you get your inspiration,
I was about to say, I think it's kind of damn cool.
Yeah. Anyway,
but and it's very fitting that I get the last one for Tomorrow Never Knows. Actually, it's not the last one because we got
yeah.
Oh, that's all right. Actually, it works that way. Tomorrow Never Knows. I really don't have much to say on this. I think it just sounds great and much more punch, but I don't think it sounds that terribly different to me. I just love it because it sounds great in the new technology environment. But other than that, Rob, you're up.
I thought when we heard the Atmos mix, there was a bigger difference in the sound. I agree with you. One thing I like about this, and this is a pretty this way of thinking about the fans. The mono mix that was originally on the mono mix, the mono album, and then pulled back, but it already gotten out there, and fans for years have been looking for that version, and now it's on this box set. So someone was thinking about that when they put that on there, and I was very happy to see that. As we're all collectors, also as much as being fans, it's nice that it's part of this now.
Yeah, no, it cost $1,000 for that.
Right. Now that whole version is out there. It's on the box set. So so I was happy about that. Out of everything, I think they were very careful not to change much on Tomorrow Never Knows, because I think you could get lost doing that. I mean, the way it all works.
Believe it or not, I think the tambourine is up a little bit more in the mix.
Okay, that's
Maybe.
not. It's not like they changed the loops.
No.
Or the placement of the loops or something. So I tambourine's a little hotter. Good, get Ringo in there with the tambourine. I thought that was. I was happy, like I said, the mono mix and the original mono mix sounded good. One starts up and one starts up cold. The other starts with a fade. So I was happy with it. So to me, you can't have this song. It's funny. This was the first song they recorded for the album, but it's the last song on the album because you can't place it anywhere else.
No.
So and that was what I wanted to just bring up to you guys. What happens if instead of the way they did the album, the order of the album, they had one side more of the guitar-based songs and the second side would be more the experimental songs, like For No One or Eleanor Rigby on like side 2, and like Dr. Robert and I Want to Tell You on side 1.
Doesn't work.
Yeah, I know. It's Love You 2
is everything.
Love You 2 has to be earlier in the album, which it is. It's the 4th song, because it's such a different sound.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear,
or it had to be a side 1 closer.
Yeah. So to me, I look at because a lot of John's stuff for the most part was guitar based, and Paul's was more, experimental taste at the time. So that's what I was thinking when I was listening to the album, of how maybe could have had a different order. I mean, I'm glad it's not, but it did cross my mind. So,
Tony, what'd you think?
It's interesting to hear take 1. I always think that would have scared the hell out of the kids.
Yes.
I think that would have been the, whereas on the White Album, we all ran away from Revolution number 9. We were little and went, Mommy, what's that? I think Tomorrow Never Knows, the end of, as take 1 at the end of a Beatle album would have had like a lot of kids reaching for their acid. I mean, reaching for their teddy bears. But anyway.
But think about
it. My laundry, because it sounds like they're doing like a wash.
Nice. Anyway.
But think about it. The version that was released has a much more pop sound compared to the take 1.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, you listen to the first take, it's like, oh my God, how could they 4 months early be working on Rubber Soul, and this is the first thing they record is as their new song for their new album.
Yeah.
Hey, same thing with Pepper. First song was When I'm 64. Not really revelatory and
first song could be Strawberry Fields Forever.
You know what I mean.
Yeah, I know.
All right, Tony, you want to take Rob, you want to take Paperback Writer?
Yeah, I like Paperback Writer a lot in the new mix because I always thought the stereo mix was too all over the place. I always like the mono mix, and plus it's longer. I don't like the fact that it's in an EP form. It bothers the hell out of me.
That's a different story.
I know, but it or at least give a picture. Don't go by the Parlophone cover. Go by the Nice American cover where you get, at least on that song, you got it backwards playing John Lennon. But I like the fact that they did a 2022 mix, and of course you have to include the mono mix. The mono mix of Paperback Writer is fantastic.
Yep.
The stereo versions, I think, pretty cool. Also, the new mix. This sort of pushes away the mix we know and love. But what bothered me just a little bit, and it has nothing to do with the song, but the 3 songs ended up on Yesterday and Today. Now, I know they're out there and they're available, but if you're going to include an EP, why don't you put those 3 songs on there? From the ones that ended up on Yesterday and Today, because those versions mixes are different.
Yes, they made special stereo mixes in '66.
Right. So, that's my only qualm about it. Paperback Writer is just, to me, I just don't understand how the Beatles said, "Oh, what song can we play that is really difficult for our '66 tour? Oh, let's play Paperback Writer." And it's a tough song to play in any play. The bass line is incredibly hard to play live. Paul's even had problems with it when I've seen him. And that's the song they chose to sing in '66 tour. Instead of Rain, which is more of a straight ahead rock song. So, but I like what they did with it. I was very impressed. I always wondered where it would be if you had 16 songs. Would it be at the end of side 1, Rain beginning of side 2 or something? But I was very impressed with the stereo remix. I liked it a lot. I liked the placement of everything, and that's about it.
Tony?
Like Ringo's kick drum accented, but don't love it. I thought Paul's vocals are a bit too spaced. I think they're too spatially mixed. Paul's bass kicks you in the head. I get it. I thought the effect is a little reduced.
It's reduced on the stereo because it always has been the mono.
I know, but I would almost like to have heard it applied more in the stereo, to be honest.
Okay.
But didn't really love the stereo mix. I thought Rain. I'm sorry, we're just doing Payback Writer. Yeah. Anyway, that was it.
Yes, the only thing I think they missed, and then we'll go on to Rain and finish this up. On some of the bootlegs, you can hear George Martin say, "All yours, Paul." And it's not on here, which is kind of weird. You would think there'd be a little bit of chatter, let them do it, because you do hear some chatter on the outtake. But anyway, Tony, want to finish it off with Rain?
Yeah, I love the mono remastering. Sounds great. The stereo version's too loud. It's too spaced again. It makes things much more pronounced, but it somehow also, to me, gets them lost. Maybe it's just because it was the last thing I listened to. I might have been fatigued.
Maybe.
I don't know, but I just didn't love it.
Okay.
I love the album. Barring a few things, I think it is a go-to. But the Paperback Writer and Rain, neither one really thrilled me.
And that's okay, because on the LP you don't get it. You have to play it on the EP.
Right.
Right. So, and even the CD, you have to play a separate CD. So that's cool. Rob, what'd you think of Rain?
I love the fact that they played the version that they played fast.
Yeah.
And then they slow it down. I think it goes from C to a G.
Wait a minute. I totally forgot the outtakes, guys. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
the revelatory
Yeah,
outtake.
Jesus Christ. I wrote holy S word. I wrote, and my comment on take 5 was, it beat the hell out of what the San Francisco bands thought that they were doing that were so, oh my God. I mean, I'm a big fan of San Francisco music, so I'm just busting chops here. An amazing band performance.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And you see
And
why.
then
I'm sorry.
the slow take, it's nice to hear it sans the backing vocals, the stereo take later. But take 5, again, totally freaking revelatory. But anyway, go ahead. Sorry, Rob.
Well, and then you hear the same. It's take 5, the fast version, super fast, and you understand why Ringo claims that's one of his best drumming, because he doesn't miss anything on that.
Did Ringo know that they slowed it down when they released it? Like, I often wonder if Ringo's never heard the record. I wonder if you played the record for Ringo to go, what the hell's that? I didn't play that.
Come on now.
Anyway.
And one thing that was cool about the slowed down version, you can understand how they figured out that this is going to have a sound like this, where if they'd released it as the fast version, it wouldn't have the same impact. There's a certain sound when they slow it down, and the drums on it, and just everything about it. So I agree with you. It does have a different feel without the backing vocals and the back up vocals and stuff like that. So to me, that it's a standout only because we again learn how a song comes together in a nice way, not just like boring, music teacher type way, but in like here it is, listen to it and you will like it. And it's, I mean, what is it? I think it's like a 25-second difference, I think. Yeah, I think it's a 25-second difference between the slower version and the faster version. So that's a big jump. That's a big jump. So I was very impressed with that. I'm glad they included that again. Thinking like fans a little bit on that one, because that's something that we'd like to hear.
Yeah, and again, just like Yellow Submarine demo or idea, we've never heard that there was a fast version of Rain.
We knew about it, but we never heard it.
Right. Well, I didn't even. You know what? I'll be honest. As a Beatle fan, I didn't really know about the fast version. I
knew about it. I didn't know it was that fast.
Right.
I thought it was like a little bit.
Yeah.
That is a huge way they played that fast and then to slow it down. That is a huge.
Right. It's mentioned in the books that it was slowed down, but
yeah, and Paul records his bass over the slowed down version.
Right. That's the beautiful part about that part.
It's so funny because think about this, if they released the fast version, all right, it could be a single. The slowed down version, it's a B-side.
That's fun, yeah.
I don't know about that. I actually think Rain is a very straight ahead song, even though it has a lot of vocal tricks and backward tapes and but I always thought it was very poppy actually.
But Rain would to me is almost leading into the Pepper area of psychedelia.
It's right there.
Anyway, we've spent a lot of time on this album, and rightfully so. We're not going to rate it because it's a 10. I don't give a damn. It's a 10.
11.
I love the remix. I mean, in general, I love the box set. I think I can't wait for Rubber Soul if they're going to give it to us in the next one. So other than that, I think we've covered everything we want to say, right, guys?
Yeah.
And we really hope that you enjoyed as much as we did. We hope we've given you some insight as well. And for Fab 4 Free For All, I am Mitch Axelrod. I've been your moderator, and joining me as they always do are
Rob Leonard
and
Tony Triguardo.
And we appreciate you listening and watching, and we will see you all next time.
Fab 4 Free For All was edited and produced by Tony Triguardo at Word of Mouth Studios in Westbury, New York.
The opening and closing theme is My Dolly by the band The Badge, featuring longtime listener Jeff Slate, available on its debut album Digital Retro and recent Best Of compilation, as well as from the Fab 4 Free For All website.
Thanks for listening to Fab 4 Free For All.